Hello everyone! So, Doctor Who Legend of the Sea Devils finally just dropped a couple of days ago. I apologize, I was a little late out to the party on that one. I had to deal with some family matters stuff, but eventually I did really get to see it last night, and I had some time to waddle over in my brain, sort of think of it and assess the situation, and here I am to give out my full review on it. Now, obviously I didn't really get a chance to fully review Eve of the Daleks on my channel. I did, however, did a sort of review of it on the Northern Entertainment Group YouTube channel, where I also have my weekly show, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Go there, check it out. I basically did an entire breakdown of the entire episode, and I'm also planning to do the same thing for Legend of the Sea Devils next month, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Now, having said all that, I really liked Legend of the Sea Devils. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a much needed improvement over Eve of the Daleks, which, again, if you go to the Northern Entertainment Group YouTube channel and see my breakdown of the episode, I wasn't really the biggest fan of the Eve of the Daleks. It's my least favorite Dalek story, which isn't really saying much because I absolutely love every single time the Daleks show up. So this being my least favorite doesn't really say all that much. That being said, I think Legend of the Sea Devils is a much better episode, much better story than Eve of the Daleks. Now, obviously, I think in my breakdown of the episode, I did mention that the main problem with the episode was the lack of setting because of COVID rules, because they had to really shoot the entire thing in a mostly confined space, and that might have contributed to the fact that it's a basically a time loop Groundhog Day type of an episode. This is definitely not the case with Legend of the Sea Devils. They very clearly, obviously, used a lot of sets in a studio environment, but they also did, or at least I'm assuming, that's the way it looked like, they also filmed a lot of it outside, and whether it was just filming on location outside, or whether it was just inside a studio and was all just CGI to look like it was outside, it looked amazing. Seriously, the way the episode looks, not just the visuals, which were also spectacular, but the way the locations and the ships and the village and the beach and, yes, even the Sea Devil's Cave really looked like they really put a lot of effort into this. Here's a little bit of a negative criticism of it. This episode, when it shows every bit ironic because it's coming from me, but I think the episode was a little too short for its own good. I believe most of the Jodie Whittaker era episodes were around 50 minutes-ish. I believe Eve of the Daleks was a bit closer to 59 minutes, I think. But then again, that was a New Year's special, so understandably it would be longer. But this episode, I think, was like 47 minutes long, which, again, I could be wrong about this. It might be actually the shortest Jodie Whittaker era episode, which I think a little bothers me. I think there was definitely more you could have done with this episode and actually give it much more bit of a runtime. But it's really just a minor thing, and it has nothing to do with the actual story itself. First of all, let's talk about the main villains here. The Sea Devils. I absolutely loved the Sea Devils from their original debut episode, The Sea Devils, in the Third Doctor era. I think just connecting them to the Silurians, which also made their debut during the Third Doctor's era, was really clever, and I loved the variations of the species. And obviously the Silurians have been brought back to modern Doctor Who by none other than Chris Chibnall, the current showrunner of the show. He did it all the way back in 2010's The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. But yeah, I did not really appreciate the redesign, the drastic redesign of the Silurians. I am okay that they kept some features from the original design. Now, obviously, I mean, there's no way of getting around it. The original look of the Silurians from the 70s and even the 80s doesn't really look all that good. It's very clearly a person in a rubber suit. Wasn't really the best effects, but the drastic redesign that the Silurians did experience during the Matt Smith era and a little bit of the Capaldi era, I wasn't a big fan of it. And while I do love some of the characters that came out of that redesign, in particular Madame Vastra, I'm still not 100% on board with the redesign. What I will say about the Sea Devils, I loved the modern, updated look of the Sea Devils. I like that they did a sort of a similar thing that they did with the Sontarans in Jodie Whittaker's third season, where they just took the original look of the Sontarans and sort of updated it to the modern era, as opposed to giving it a drastic, almost barely unrecognizable redesign like what they did for the David Tennant era, which I still have no idea what were they thinking, taking these strong, imposing, intimidating creatures and just making them diminutive dwarfs for comic relief purposes. I was never really on board with that. Now, obviously, the Chris Chibnall era Sontarans did sort of maintain that, but they also made the Sontarans look scary and intimidating once again, which is very similar to what he did with the Sea Devils. It's the exact same look of the original Sea Devils, but much more realistic looking, much more practically looking. Now, obviously, a big criticism that I've heard from some people so far is that their mouths just don't move when they speak, which is understandable. Now, here's what I say to that. When the Sea Devils were originally introduced into Doctor Who, again, their mouths didn't move, but that was mainly because it was very, very difficult to work around the fact that it's just a mask and a person in a suit. And even if you look at those original episodes, it's pretty obvious that the neck of the creature is more or less where the head of the person in the suit is, and that the entire rest of the head is just, a mask standing there. So it makes sense that when the person speaks, it's not coming from the actual mouth of the creature, it's rather from the neck. But what I appreciated they did in this episode, however, is that whenever we see the Sea Devils talk, their necks sort of inflate and deflate, sort of where the gills are, which, again, it's a reference to the fact that in the original costumes, the head of the person speaking was where the creature's neck was, but it's a way of explaining how, we can hear them talk without actually seeing their mouths move a little too much, and it's something that I really appreciated that Doctor Who does from time to time, especially during the Hartnell era, where they were fully aware that these are just people in costumes, but any sort of times when it was painfully obvious that these are just rubber costumes and rubber masks, they kind of made it a part of the species, in a way that in the Sensorites, for example, they just explained it away by saying that Sensorites just don't have eyelids, so their eyes are open all the time, which is why you don't really actually see the Sensorites' eyes close and reopen. So I appreciate that bit of creative, working around the effects. Now, obviously, in the modern era of Doctor Who, you could have fixed that, but I think the change would have been too drastic that I'm just still fine with the way the Sea Devils looked. I like the way the eyes looked, and I even like the new outfits that they gave all the Sea Devils. What I didn't really appreciate was the fact that the head Sea Devil, the main one, kind of was really the only one that was significant to the story. I mean, the Doctor doesn't really have too much interactions with any of the other Sea Devils. They were just sitting around in the background, doing stuff with the bubbly things, which I guess it's important for the story. But it would have been nice if the Doctor actually had conversations with some of the other Sea Devils, as opposed to just them sitting around the background, not doing anything too important, or just attacking the other characters. So yeah, the Sea Devils, I loved their look. Not so much the way they were integrated into the story, but as far as their main plan goes, it's basically just the exact same plan that the original Silurians had when they first appeared on the show. Basically just transformed the entire planet Earth into an environment that actually suits reptiles more than humans, but they just adapted it to Sea Devils to make the entire planet more suitable for aquatic creatures, which I liked. I really appreciated that they're basically doing the exact same thing that their distant relatives will try to do in about a century and a half, but just, adapting it to the other branch of the species. I liked that. I liked the plan. It was a good plan. As far as evil plans go, I would have much appreciated if the Sea Devils weren't just seen as evil baddies. And that's another thing that I see as a bit of an issue with the Chibnall era monsters, especially when it comes to returning characters, is that for some reason Chris Chibnall and company just seem to write these monsters as just generic evil monsters, and not so much the complicated and conflicted and highly cultured alien cultures that these are. In particular, the Sea Devils, as we've seen in their original appearance, which is really weird for him because he actually did manage to implement this sort of cultural significance and actual real-world struggle to the Silurians when he brought them back into the show. It's weird to me that he was unable to do so for the Sea Devils, so that's a bit of an inconsistency, but I mean, that's just a problem with the Chibnall era overall. That has nothing to do with this story in particular. Now, as for the human characters, again, Dan continues to be my personal favorite Jodie Whittaker era companion. Again, that is if you don't actually include Captain Jack as a Jodie Whittaker era companion, because I see him as more of a companion of multiple Doctors overall. So Dan, as specifically a 13th Doctor companion, he's easily making a case for my favorite. I loved the outfit he was wearing, the silly, ridiculous pirate outfit that apparently Yaz convinced him to wear. I like that. There's more banter between the companions, something I really appreciated when you have teams of more than one companion per Doctor. Speaking of companions, Yaz, I did appreciate the sort of romantic angle that they're trying to take between the Doctor and Yaz in these final stories. Now, obviously, the Doctor has fallen in love multiple times throughout his/her timeline. It's nothing new to any of us. Now, obviously, we already saw what happens when the Doctor allows themselves to fall in love with a human. We've seen that happen with Rose already, and we've kind of already seen that with River Song. It doesn't always end well, and you don't always get the happy ending that the Husbands of River Song was able to provide us with. So, yeah, you know that this relationship is kind of doomed to fail from the start. But I will say this: when David Tennant fell in love, when they had the whole David Tennant and Rose thing in David Tennant's first season, as I mentioned, it was David Tennant's first season. So yeah, while we did have a full season of the Doctor and Rose with Christopher Eccleston, it was a bit jarring that suddenly they've fallen in love, and immediately David Tennant's next episode after he regenerated. So what I do appreciate about the 13th Doctor and Yaz relationship is that they've been together for a while. Like, Yaz is the longest running companion in the modern era of the show. The Doctor has spent the most time with Yaz, oddly enough. And I believe they've also mentioned that Yaz will also depart after Jodie Whittaker's final episode, which also puts Yaz in an interesting situation, because I believe that is actually the first time out of any Doctor in the show's entire history where a companion was there for every single episode of a particular Doctor. Usually a companion is added to a Doctor late in a season or the beginning of a season, or just leaves the Doctor at a certain point. Yaz is really the first companion that's actually been there for a single Doctor's entire run, which is actually pretty commendable. Whatever your opinions on the character of Yaz in general, you gotta at least give her that. She's been with the Doctor for an incredibly long time, and from the looks of the trailer, which we will talk about in a minute, but from the looks of the trailer, she's still kind of gonna be there during the Doctor's regeneration scene, unless it's a red herring of some sort. I don't know. I don't want to get into that just yet. But the relationship between Yaz and the Doctor, where they kind of set it up as doomed to fail right from the start, even though some portion of the audience wants this to happen. I personally don't, but a lot of people are really shipping Yaz and the Doctor. I'm not a big fan of the idea of Phasmin in general, because like I said, we've seen it happen and it doesn't end well. But I love that in this episode they seem to address the fact that the Doctor knows it's doomed to fail. I loved that she brought up a reference to River Song and all the other times the Doctor has allowed herself or himself to fall in love, that it doesn't really end well. But so that is all I can say as far as the Doctor and Yaz relationship. As far as the other characters, I liked the young man who was added to this episode. I really enjoyed him. He was a really funny comic relief character, which is not something that I would have expected from him when he was introduced in the episode. But he really did grow on me steadily over time. I did feel like that his sudden shift from "you killed my father, prepare to die" to "now I'm your loyal crewman and I'm going to give you a hug, even though I know you're a dangerous pirate queen and I probably shouldn't do that." So yeah, I feel like that change was a little too sudden. He was still a very funny character overall. I liked Madam Chang, the pirate queen, as a character. I loved her backstory. I love that she's not just a typical black and white villain, like I mentioned with the Sea Devils and a lot of other Chris Chibnall era monsters. I love that at least Chibnall manages to infuse a little bit of humanity to the human villains on the show as opposed to the alien villains. So yeah, I liked her story, that she wasn't just there because she was after treasure or because she enjoyed killing people. She was just there to save her crew, to save her son, to save her sons, which, is what a pirate captain should do, putting their crew and their ship above all else. I did appreciate that part about her. It would have been a lot nicer. It would have actually made the story feel a lot more tighter if we actually did get to see her being reunited with her crew by the end and being reunited with her sons. It would have just tied this episode in such a neat little bow, and it would have really elevated the episode entirely. But I get it. I mean, there's some stuff that just tell, don't show, and you kind of get the feeling of it without actually having to see it happening on screen. The character of Jihan is probably my favorite character that was introduced into this episode. I loved how the contrast of introducing him as this ruthless, vicious captain who throws his entire crew off the ship and overboard, that sort of makes him look like a vicious, evil, mean captain, but really he was only doing it to protect his crew, to save them, because he knew that leaving them on board with the main Sea Devil on the ship, he would have killed all of them, so he just saved them and sort of gave them the important things they needed to survive, like the Keystone, for example, which became more important later in the story. I liked what they did with his character, and I loved his sacrifice by the end, and how it really tied into the entire story. It was all about honor for Jihan, and because he knew that he wasn't meant to exist in this century anymore, that there was nothing left for him, his entire friends and family, anyone who he might have known is probably dead right now, so he had nothing left to gain by staying alive. I liked that it bled into his sacrifice. Some other miscellaneous stuff, I enjoyed seeing some of the scenes with the giant sea monster. I really like the idea that the Sea Devils have a giant sea monster, but here's a bit of a negative for this episode. The sea monster just kind of disappeared at some point and was never really seen, heard from, or used again in this episode, which I'm not a big fan of when TV shows, movies, and especially Doctor Who introduces something this big and major and grandiose to only use it a couple of times and then just forget about it. I mean, it was a really cool scene when Madam Chang's new crew, which now included the other guy that I'm forgetting his name, and Dan, shot 3 cannonballs at it, and the creature just shot all 3 cannonballs back into the sky to collide with one another and explode. That was cool. That was badass. Really well done, and it really just gave me the feel of, oh shoot, what are they going to do now? How are they going to stop this thing? And then at the end of this day, it was completely irrelevant. They never addressed the sea monster attacking the ship again. It really was there to just grab the TARDIS and bring it back to the Sea Devil's lair, which, whatever. I did love seeing the TARDIS underwater. That's something I've been really excited for ever since it was teased in the trailer a couple of weeks ago. I just loved the idea of seeing the TARDIS completely submerged, and that's something that I don't believe we've ever actually officially seen. I feel like the only thing to get close to it is in the War Games when the second Doctor is trying to get away from the Time Lords, and somehow ends up throwing the TARDIS underwater. And we see on the scanner sort of a look at the ocean floor with fish swimming around it before they have to take off again. So it was really nice to actually get to see the Doctor opening the doors to the TARDIS, and they can actually sort of breathe inside the oxygen bubble that keeps them from suffocating from space whenever the TARDIS is in space. And it's sort of like Brian Pond looking down at the Earth at the end of Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Side note, was also written by Chris Chibnall, but this time underwater. I loved that. It looked amazing, and I wish we get more of that. The TARDIS submerged underwater. And another thing I really enjoyed about this scene is that even though the ground seems to completely cave in around them, the TARDIS doesn't move, which is something, again, it bleeds into this idea of the TARDIS, that the TARDIS doesn't necessarily move unless the Doctor wants to, or unless a giant sea monster happens to grab it and it claws. It's a bit confusing, but I love that the TARDIS just stayed in the same place, similar to how the TARDIS stayed in the exact same location when the entire planet Earth was taken away in the Stolen Earth. So yeah, I like when the TARDIS does stuff like that. But overall, I'd say this episode was really well done. I would give this, if I had to give it a ranking, I would say I would give it a B, or I don't know, an A minus. I don't know. I don't necessarily give rankings to episodes. That's not really my thing. I just say if I liked it or didn't like it, and explain what I liked or didn't like about it. I would say, I don't know, 4 stars, 80 out of 100. I don't know. Take that in any way, shape, or form you want to. I liked it. There were a couple of issues I didn't like about this episode, but overall, really enjoyed it. And I'm mad at myself that I didn't have a camera on me when the Coming Soon trailer happened. But I'll smash my head into the wall later. Right now, we gotta talk about the trailer. So yeah, it was just a teaser. A teaser for Jodie Whittaker's final episode. But as a teaser, it pretty much gave us all we needed to know. A little bit of stuff we didn't need to know. But it was just there to get us excited and hyped up for Jodie's final episode. We got Daleks, Cyberman, and the Master. The only time I can remember all 3 of these villains being on screen in the same episode was the 5 Doctors, the 20th anniversary special. Even then, they didn't get to interact too much. I mean, yeah, the Master was attacked by Cybermen, but neither one of these two had any interactions with one random Dalek that was there. So it would be nice and interesting to actually finally get to see a Master, Daleks, and Cybermen teaming up, or at least fighting one another. The Doctor's 3 greatest enemies. The only thing that's now missing from this is probably Davros. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're also keeping Davros a secret from us to actually reveal Davros on screen, which would make this even better of a threat to the Doctor. We also see Ashad, the lone Cyberman, back. Curious what happened there, because, the Master kind of killed him in The Timeless Children. So, how is he still alive? But be that as it may, he's one of the better characters introduced during the 13th Doctor's era, and it's nice to see him back. And speaking of people coming back, we get to see Vinder back. I wonder if Belle is coming back, and will we actually get to see their child now? But, I pretty much danced around this whole idea long enough. Kate Stewart is back, alongside Tegan Jovanka and Ace. Holy crap, this is the moment I wish I had a camera on me, because it rocked me to my core. And I know people use this word a little too freely these days. I was literally, and yes, I am using the word correctly now, I was literally shaking when I saw that. I just got a huge jolt of energy all through my body, and was just when I saw Ace coming back. I didn't quite recognize Janet Fielding immediately right away. I had to really look up who she was, mainly because her hair was completely different from anything we've ever seen Tegan use on the show. But that's irrelevant. That's beside the point. Two classic era companions from the 80s are teaming up. First time we actually get to see both these characters on screen in the history of Doctor Who. Can you tell I'm a little bit overly excited about this? Now here's something I should probably say. This final episode could suck. It could be completely terrible, and I'm just getting myself overexcited over nothing. I acknowledge that. I realize that. I understand that. But you can't stop me from getting excited over it. I mean, it's Jodie Whittaker's final episode. It will be the 300th story of the show. We will get to see the next Doctor. It's leading up towards the 59th anniversary of the show, and also will be leading up to the 60th anniversary of the show. It's a good time to be a Doctor Who fan, and just, yeah, whatever your opinions may be on the Jodie Whittaker era as a whole, and believe me, opinions really do vary on that, and I am willing to accept and listen to all opinions on it, but this final episode looks to be a banger and ending this era on a high note. Something one can only really hope for. So yeah, that's really all I can say. Sorry for my jumbled, messy ramblings as a Doctor Who fan, but hey, that's just me. That's just how I do reviews. Now it's just saying everything I like about it, saying everything I didn't like about it, and just generally trying to convey my feelings towards an episode or several episodes of the show. So yeah, I believe that's all I can say for now. Make sure to check me out if you like me talking about Doctor Who. I have a Doctor Who show on the Northern Entertainment Group YouTube channel. It's called The Greatest Show in the Galaxy. We're doing right now what I like to call Dalek Month, where I talk about Dalek appearances all throughout different forms of media on the show. We are going to have a tier ranking list of the best and worst Dalek designs, and obviously next month, I can reveal it right here and now, next month, in honor of this episode, will be all about the Sea Devils, from this episode to their classic appearances, and even some off-camera appearances of the Sea Devils. So really, that's all I can say for now. And yeah, thank you for watching. If you have, let me know in the comments below what you thought about this episode, how excited you are for Jodie Whittaker's final episode, and let me know which other returning characters you want to see in that episode. Let me know down below in the comments, and I shall see you all next time talking about Doctor Who. Alon Zay! Hi there! Thank you for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.